Okay, this is the Arborist call for the 8th of August. And we're going to start off with core team updates, and then we'll have our usual research and implementation updates. And then we'll move on to open announcements and any open discussion topics that anybody wants to raise. These calls are bi-weekly calls where contributors to the Zcash protocol come together to discuss timelines and processes and provide updates on the work that they're doing around implementation and the research and development. The idea of these calls is to make the Zcash protocol development process more transparent and accessible to a broad range of participants in the Zcash community in general. Anybody can join these calls. You can register by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. And if you want to participate by providing an update or making a presentation or proposing an agenda topic, then just drop us an email on arboristcall@zfnd.org to request a slot. Other ways you can get involved are by applying for a Zcash community grant. You can also join the Zcash R&D Discord, which is where most of the Zcash protocol engineers hang out and coordinate on a day-to-day basis. And then there's the ever spicy and exciting and heated discussion that takes place on the Zcash community forums. And I'm aware that these links are not clickable on your screen, but you can find them all by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. Let's get started with core team updates, and we'll start off with the Electric Coin Company. I suspect it's Chris today.
I suppose I'm probably the only one around. I just noted from the chat, Jason McGee is asked to be promoted if he hasn't already. At ECC, we have been working on three primary things. The first being the NU6 lockbox funding streams implementation. The second being improvement to the ability to handle fully transparent history in the Zcash client backend, which is the backend for the wallet SDKs. And then finally, we are nearing completion on the Tor integration with the wallet backend for both exchange rate retrieval. That's already implemented and is in testing in the Zashi wallet. And shortly, Strat has an open PR for being able to retrieve transaction data over Tor and reduce the leakage of a particular wallet's activity to the Light Wallet server. So those have been the main things. We've also had some discussions with folks who are working on hardware wallets for Zcash that I think fairly interesting. And there's some work that we have lined up there to really, get the transaction signing process updated so that it's easier for hardware wallets to take advantage of using the transaction builders in Zcash primitives. I think that's everything that comes to mind for me right now.
Cool. Any questions for ECC? Okay, let's move on to the Zcash Foundation. I'm guessing that Alfredo is on the hot seat today.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so since the last Arborist call in Zebra, we added lockbox funding streams. We now calculate the lockbox in the Zebra consensus and tracks the amounts in Zebra state. This needed some Zebra database changes. Yeah, initially we made an implementation where after the upgrade, people had to resync the whole chain, and we realized that that's not good. So we are working around so people don't have to do that. Well, we are pretty much focused on NU6 stuff. So in the process of that, we fixed some other issues we found, like the deserialization of the value balance. We added NU6 network upgrade variants to our code, and we added some code to Libra Zcash for that as well, which is already merged in. We have some open PRs, but we are still working on RPC methods for NU6, the get block subsidy RPC specifically. Finally, we implemented SIP 236, which is required that Coinbase transaction balance exactly after NU6 activation. So we're keeping an eye to the SIPs as well. Yeah, that's kind of it. It doesn't maybe sounds like a lot, but some of the logbox PR had a bunch of review from external people. We had a lot of internal discussion as well. So yeah, you put a fair amount of time on them. And I guess that's it.
Any questions for Alfredo? Okay, let's move on and let's cover off the progress that's been made on NU6. So the original target for testnet activation was today, but I believe that that's slipped a bit. Does Chris, are you able to provide an update of when we think we're going to be ready to activate on testnet?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we're in the process of final debugging of the Zcash D changes, and I expect that we'll have that ready early next week. So that's our current objective. And then Yasser here at ECC has been doing some work to make it so that we can run a private test net, including both Zcash D and ZBRD nodes. So that we can have confidence before we do an actual testnet activation.
Okay. So what are we looking at? Maybe towards the end of next week, maybe Thursday next week or something like that?
For an actual testnet activation height, it depends upon what the results of the private testnet work end up being. But you know, we will publish a release candidate. And then that does not set a testnet activation height, then we'll activate that on a private testnet, private fork of the testnet, ensure that we're able to, you know, interact with the testnet chain properly, and that that funding streams are getting paid correctly, and then we can go ahead with setting the actual testnet activation height and publishing a release. So there's actually a fair bit to get done next week, just in terms of getting a release out. But so I think that it's optimistic that we will have an actual testnet activation next week, because we actually need, you know, the you know, some folks to start, or we need enough folks to start running the testnet node. So setting a testnet activation height next week, I think, is entirely possible. The actual testnet activation will have to come a while after that.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on NU6? Okay, let's move on. I think we can probably skip over Zcash D deprecation, as I think the priority has been on NU6. So
well, that's not entirely true. You know, we've made a lot of good progress in the past week or so on supporting fully transparent history in Zcash client backend. So that's actually probably been where most of our work has gone to. The NU6 updates have been relatively small compared to that, with the exception of the debugging that I'm doing right now. But yeah, in the past week, there's been very little time required for the NU6 upgrade, but the Zcash D deprecation has taken up most of our time.
Any questions on Zcash D deprecation? Okay, moving on to research and implementation updates, and we'll start off with Frost, and I'm guessing it's Conrado.
Yep. Um, yeah, the last 2 weeks we worked mostly on updating the signing. Sorry about the noise. Updating the signing tool that we have for a demo, or Zcash transaction signing demo. So this tool was based on some wallet code. It was kind of annoying. You need to check out a fork of wallet code and compile it. So now it's like a standalone tool, which is much simpler, both to read if you're interested in the code and also to use. I just updated the documentation. We just need to review and merge that PR. So it should be a bit easier to run the demo. There's also been a lot of discussions about how to use Frost with Zcash, what is the flow for generating a Zcash wallet using Frost, and I'm very glad that all the discussions are happening. So yeah, I want to resume work on the zip, and after all the discussions, we should write down to specify how the best way to generate a Frost Zcash wallet. We also ongoing work on refresh shares for DKG. And what we're going next, probably still need to, the final piece for our Frost server is adding authentication encryption. So we wrote a design for that, and we probably proceed with implementation for it. And after that's done, I think the server will be like in a place that can actually be used by people. So yeah, people can start experimenting with it. And also I want to look into transaction plan format, which is something that is also needed for doing Frost with Zcash. And yeah, there's some. I know that ECC has like a sketch of a format for transaction plan, and Wallet has its own format for transaction plan. So I want to study both and come up with a proposal for something to be standard. That's it.
Cool. Any questions relating to Frost? I think it's probably worth pointing out that Frost is usable today for Zcash. The work that's going on at the moment on the server is to make it a lot easier for people who want to collaborate on signing a transaction using Frost to be able to communicate with one another and to avoid the need to cut and paste blobs of text back and forth through something like Signal or whatever your secure messaging platform of choice is. But it's definitely out there. People have been using it and experimenting with it. So yeah, this work that's going on at the moment is more about making it easier for wallet developers to integrate and for people to end up having a good user experience when they're actually using it. Okay, let's move on to Zcash shielded assets. And John, I wasn't expecting to see you here this evening, but welcome.
All right. Hi everybody. No, I was asked to hop on. Vivek is not here, so the usual updates won't be available. I'm currently at the Science of Blockchain conference in New York. There's a lot of really interesting things going on here, but I think I'm actually kind of available to discuss and talk about questions on ZSA generally, and maybe present a little bit not the work on the current work on ZSA, but kind of more the roadmap and follow up to the past conversations that we had on the status of ZSA and questions of ZSA. So I have a little bit in mind of what can be interesting to discuss, but since it's not like updates on research and implementation, I guess I'll listen to all the rest of the updates and maybe keep it for the conversation.
Cool. Well, let's progress on through. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, so just real quick, so last Arborist call, Jonathan gave an overview of Kedit's grant on acid.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you super well. There's a lot of things.
You're very quiet, Jason.
Okay, I'll reconnect with a different device. Sorry about that.
No, now it works. Now it works.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so last Arborist call, Jonathan gave an overview of Kedit's grant on asset swaps and transaction acceptance. We talked about the new process post the stablecoin cancellation, where ZCG will have the core devs review technical grants and assess any potential risks. Jonathan, you seem to be under the impression that you know, everything was good to go before you posted the grant to the forum. And then last week we saw in Josh's weekly update that Jonathan and Josh had discussed the grant, and he said ECC is conducting an internal review. So ZCG is ready to vote on this grant, and we'd like to understand the status of that internal review, if it's still ongoing, and what the next steps are.
Okay. So I don't know what the internal review of ECC is. I'm not sure that the update that Josh has posted, I don't exactly understand what is that review. I do know that all of those features we basically discussed way back in 2023 as part of the long-term roadmap of ZSA. One of them is implementation of a ZIP that was already reviewed, which is asset swap. The other is implementing the ability to refuse transactions. With, again, that's something that at least Dara last time said Dara would really want this to be in the protocol and has a use for it directly. And what it didn't seem to raise any security concerns or controversy of any sorts. There was some comments on the forums, which were more not about the features themselves, but more about like the pace of the ZSA project and fundings, etc. There's maybe a few misconceptions there to lift that I can use the stage here. Most of our work, when we submit a grant proposal, we already do much of the work ahead of time in order to know that we can complete the grant, so and to know how much, to have a good estimate of how much time it's going to take. So the talks about the current grant actually started somewhere along February. So we have been basically there's a few engineers that have been since February, both looking at asset swap implementation, looking at transaction refusal, also looking at verifiable encryption. We're thinking of publishing outside of a grant the results of verifiable encryption, just because we did it and we think that it's useful for the ecosystem, regardless of stable coins. It can be used elsewhere in the protocol. So all this to say that there might be, it might be useful for the community to understand what it takes to develop the protocols and to chase the network upgrades to make sure that they're incorporated, and also to clarify whose responsibility it is to accept merge changes and actually activate ZSA. But from our perspective, we're in constant work with all teams, with the Zebra team, with the ECC team on the past grants, and we expect this grant that we submitted to be both done with in collaboration with these teams and to make it possible for us to attend all of ZSA issues in parallel to the NU6 deployment and the security audits. So what I would summarize is we haven't received any pushback on the content of the features. On the contrary, people seem to, when they talk about the features themselves, they seem to be accepted. There's a very there's a very difficult exercise for us to explain, engineering product management on a forum, and the time that things take, and the sort of dependencies of development and dependencies on progress of other teams. It's not an easy exercise. All I can say is that our engineers are very happy to work on engineering problems, and they're very happy that they don't need to deal with public forum project management. That's kind of my job. So if there's a way for me to directly read, address, and talk about these things in detail, I don't know if this is the place, but maybe like the major concerns we can discuss them.
Alfredo.
Yeah, this is not related to that, but I want to thank the credit team to reviewing some of the lockbox PRs we had in Zebra for the NU6 activation. And also they are going to make some testing with us for the NU6 as well. And they are always trying to help us, to help the Zebra team in whatever they can. And we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks. It's appreciated.
I feel like sometimes positive sentiments are either taken for granted or are expressed far more quietly, and are less noticeable than negative.
I must say that the sentiment on the forum was I wouldn't qualify directly as negative, because everybody was also voicing that they like the work and they like the efforts and they like let's say the efforts that are put into the engineering. I think there's a big frustration on the outcome of the value being received from investing all this money and time and effort into ZSA and not seeing deployed ZSA, which we kind of join. Maybe everybody would like to see an early use of it. There was a glimmer of hope back then in Zcash D when we did the demos of all of this working on Zcash D.
Yeah, that was a year ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah, retroactively, maybe we should have just been staying on Zcash D for a while and pushing the Zebra re-implementation to later. I don't know if that would have helped in a way, but thank you again for the positive comment.
Cool. Any other questions or comments relating to the ZSA work? No, we can always come back to it later on during the open discussion section.
I have just one last comment. Someone said here today, Zec hit 36, which I think is amazing. I also wonder if any of it is related to Terra pushing back on stable coins and stuff like I can't read this ecosystem at all. I don't understand how this functions. But congrats on Zec hitting 36. I think it should be 360.
I'd like to see 360 million users. That's what I'd like to see. Okay, let's move on. And do we have any update on the Zcash Sustainability Fund?
Yeah, just a quick update. I wanted to give everyone a heads up that we have a new developer from Eiger that just started working on the Zcash D implementation for the Zcash Sustainability Fund. His name is Paul Dan, and he goes by Giddy on Discord. He's already been asking questions on there, and he'll be working closely with Tomek, and both of them will attend the next Arborist call on August 22nd to give a technical update.
Cool. We'll look forward to that. Next up, any updates on trailing finality? I guess without Dara here.
Yeah,
Chris.
I got a quick update on this. So Shielded Labs announced today that Zuko is coming on to serve as head of product, and we're going to partner with ECC to accelerate the development of TFL and Crosslink and transition Zcash to a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake protocol. So we met with the core engineering team at ECC last week, and we discussed their roadmap and our plans to develop a prototype. And so Zuko is putting together a list of trade-offs for a couple different approaches for how we plan to move forward. And he's going to present those at the next Arborist call on August 22nd. So going forward, we're going to use this slot, and we will provide bi-weekly updates to the engineering community.
It looks like Zuko is actually here, so
Yeah, no, now I understand the 36, but again, it should be 360.
Hello?
hello.
Hi. Yeah, I don't have anything to add except hi there. Like Jason said, my role is head of product for Shielded Labs. I'm going to be writing down desirable features of future consensus or proof of whatever upgrades to present later.
Cool. So we'll pencil that in for the 22nd of August.
Sounds right.
Cool. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay. Any other open announcements that anybody wants to share?
I have something intriguing. I met here with an interesting guy from let's say another privacy token that described a way to do proof that you're in a set with like billions of records in milliseconds of proof, like some extraordinary jump in capacity that completely went under my radar. I don't know if the community is aware of it.
What sort of set?
In like a inclusion proof, basically like replacing the whole
Like a ring
trees.
signature replacement thing.
So it's kind of, yes. And so it looks like it's like a jump in capability that I haven't seen. I'm interested in understanding the community's thoughts on that particular construct, regardless of its origin. So just putting it out there. If anyone wants the links, I'll send them over. But it's intriguing.
I want the links.
You got that.
Yeah, could you post them on the forum maybe to share more widely?
I shall.
Yeah, ring signatures as currently implemented by another privacy coin obviously have their limitations in terms of the anonymity set. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's been some significant change in terms of the scalability there. Any other announcements or news that anybody wants to share? Okay, let's move on to open discussion. And John, do you want to continue to talk a bit about ZSAs and the feature roadmap there?
Maybe 1 minute. There's a big question on what is a core feature for ZSA, and I think everyone agrees that a core feature for ZSA is ZSA being actually deployed on mainnet. Let's figure out a way to do that, and hopefully everyone can start playing with the actual feature. We cannot like separate that deployment from our work. We do what we can with helping with Zebra, and we've converted a lot of our work to try to see if there's roadblocks that we can push aside. But meanwhile, because we also wanted to do asset swaps and have designed it, and because every such design and implementation is an effort, we very much are happy to develop those things. I think most of what we do is kind of core. It's not, there's nothing very superfluous on the features themselves, but I can understand why building features when the core ZSA is not out is a frustration for users. So, but again, the time it takes to vet these things with zips and then implement them both in the cryptography and in the protocol, and then do the security, etc. There's a huge lead time, and we do hope that all the core is going to make it at some point soon. So that's why we're proposing like making the ZSA actually useful for, you know, trading it with other assets and things like this.
And just to recap, vanilla ZSAs would be ready to deploy later this year, right?
Yeah, so the protocol itself is ready to deploy. The readiness in terms of comfort to deploy requires a security audit that, deeper than what has been done so far. So an actual green light to do NU6 still requires security audit, and there's aspects of fees that we could implement, but also could be implemented as part of NU7 if it goes into NU7 by others that need to be agreed on by the community. This is we've done the work to review and design what could be done, but the work is actually in the consensus parts. It doesn't really concern ZSA anymore. It's part of the wider fees of Zcash. But the short version is, yeah, it's I mean, again, the circuits are here and the capabilities are here and the testing tools are here. Like these things are here. But it requires merging them to Zcash and then deciding that they're active, one of the network upgrades.
Maybe once the current focus on the NU6 sort of testnet activation is out of the way, we could have an Arborist call where we have a specific discussion about the fees and how fees for ZSA should be structured, and give people an opportunity to find out what the sort of options are and discuss what the pros and cons of the different approaches are. But my understanding certainly is that or certainly my expectation is that fees will be paid in ZEC.
That's our proposal in the ZIP. I'm not sure if it's a full consensus, but that's our proposal in the ZIP. In any case, the existing fee mechanism the adjustments that were made in one of the latest adjustments don't require anything special when you consider a ZSA transaction. It's just like the weight of how much it takes in the block is it's a formula, and it's not a like the most of the work was trying to figure out if we're missing any corner cases, but it should be part of the regular mechanism.
Cool. Are there any counter proposals that you're aware of for different approaches to
There's
ZSA fees?
there's an argument that if you let people park let's say coins that are stable coins or things that are like other value on the Zcash blockchain, and ZEC holders are paying fees, are basically getting inflation because of dev fund and lockbox, etc., then ZEC holders are paying the price of privacy that then assets like wrapped assets don't pay that price. We've discussed these things when we were working on the zip. I'm not sure there's a way to quantify the effect, and also I'm not sure that there's a straightforward privacy preserving way to mitigate the effect, because if you're a miner that needs to validate transactions, then how do you I don't know, remove assets that you're not aware of? If it's an NFT, what do you do? Do you chop a piece of NFT? Like it's not a straightforward solution, but also the damage is not easily quantifiable. But it's not a counter argument. It's not a counter proposal. It's more one of the areas of risk that were mentioned and discussed in the.
It's an objection.
Yes. That's the straightforward way is to look at how much a transaction takes in the block and quantify it this way, and also add some payment for issuing an asset, so a fee to the issuance of the asset that's let's say hefty to encourage ZEC use. But when we submitted the zip, it was the view was to make it as seamless as possible with the regular fee mechanism, so that there's no distinction between ZSAs and regular transactions.
Chris?
It seems to me like I don't think that there's a significant issue with respect to transfer fees, because I think that, as John says, ZIP 317 transfer fees take into account, we would not want to do anything that distinguished ZSA transfers via the fee, but I don't yet have a good idea of what a good approach is to issuance fees, where it both enables sort of, trivial experimentation and small use cases, and at the same time readily enables, let's say Tether coming onto the Zcash chain or something like that, where there's a very significant use case. Now, maybe there's a per mint or per burn fee or something like that, and then you're just essentially economically incentivizing people to do large mints or large burns without there being the only proposal I've seen that tried to kind of essentially level the playing field there was Nate's proposal for the shielded hosting fees. But as John also points out, that runs into problems that doesn't really work for NFTs. So I think this is one of those things where we really need some sort of creative thinking from people interested in the Zcash ecosystem for, okay, how can we actually do this? I mean, is ordinarily, if you want to have a market discover the price for a thing, maybe you use some sort of auction mechanism or something of that sort, but I don't have good ideas here. I'm just, sort of reiterating the problem that's been discussed.
Yeah, I think a sub problem of that is the unfortunate perception that ZSAs are constantly 95% ready. As far as we're concerned, the fees, if you do them in the trivial way, their ZSA is ready. But if you do decide to have a more advanced mechanism that actually goes into the content of the assets and like which assets they are and has some sort of logic, then we might, end up needing to implement this and face again the question of like, okay, who does it, when is it ready, how's the auditing, etc. It's I think there's also an incentive to start, reaping the benefits of what was developed early.
I think for me a key question is this a problem that other blockchains who allow people to issue assets on that blockchain have experienced? When I look at things like Ethereum, Solana, etc., it doesn't seem to me like there's a problem there in terms of in fact it seems to be the opposite, that the ability to issue assets and NFT and tokens and whatnot on top of those platforms is beneficial because it attracts more users, results in more transactions, therefore more transaction fees.
Well, the argument is still valid that for a blockchain that has a significant dev fund, which like Zcash, we are still in the process of funding lots of development, and that funding goes from ZEC rather than from the hidden assets that are in ZEC. And in Ethereum, there's much less, or Solana, there's much less of that process of significant dev funds going out of the holders of the underlying asset. But the pro argument of this increases use and therefore the value. I mean, it's just a little bit unknown. That's the problem.
Chris?
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of in Ethereum, you have a fee market, and one of the things that plays into that fee market, or that plays into the fees of, say, publishing smart contracts, is essentially the cost of chain storage, effectively, of storing chain state, is what you're paying for when you pay ETH fees to launch a smart contract. So maybe it's just perceptually then that there is a cost proportionate to the load that you're inducing on the chain, because you're paying a fee that is proportionate to the cost of maintaining the state for the smart contract, and then you're paying fees to interact with that smart contract that are based upon the fee market. So there's, I guess, just a bunch of dimensions to it, but it doesn't, I think that the problem that has been worried about, and that may or may not be a problem, is the sort of the free ride, or the top heaviness problem. So if, for example, the value of assets secured by the Zcash chain become substantially greater than the value of the entirety of circulating ZEC, then you have potentially significant economic inducements to attack the chain. And that since the value of those additional assets are not, they're not reflected in the cost to attack the chain, that you have problems. Now, maybe this is something that, I don't know whether a proof of stake or a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake makes this better or worse. There's just a bunch of unknowns. With Ethereum, they haven't really had to worry about that because there have been no assets issued on Ethereum that individually are worth more than ETH, right? And so they haven't had any top heaviness yet, and I'm not sure that there are any chains where top heaviness has occurred. So maybe it's the sort of thing where, certainly at first the Zcash chain will not be top heavy, and it's something that the Zcash community can watch and worry about over time.
Any other comments on this topic? Jason, I think that Squirrel makes the point that for a while Maker was worth more than ETH. Instinctively, my gut feel is that one of the reasons that none of the assets issued on the Ethereum blockchain are worth more than Ethereum is because the value of Ethereum accrued in large part because of the ability to issue assets on top of Ethereum.
I mean, there's a scarcity of Ethereum itself, and many successful assets are trying to change hands. You're competing for a place in the block to do the transaction.
Okay, well, hopefully once I feel like once the current focus on getting NU6 deployed on testnet is over and done with, and then we move on into the testing and auditing phase, I think then will be a good time to see if we can thresh out this issue and see if there is an emergent consensus around how fees should be applied to ZSAs.
I do think, I mean, connecting to the previous talk, if there's any chance that something more sophisticated than consensus, vanilla consensus fee emerges, then that's it's better to know this very early so that that doesn't become another delaying factor.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to distinguish between an objection, because somebody has concerns about something, versus a counter proposal. If the counter proposal is simply don't deploy ZSAs, then that's a straightforward question that we can put to the community and see what their sentiment is. But yeah, I think the key thing is to see whether there's the emergence of an actual counter proposal, and also to probably express the sentiment as Chris highlighted, that we can deploy ZSAs, and if the problem of top heaviness emerges, then we can act at that point, and hopefully going forward obviously ZSAs won't be deployed until Zcash D is deprecated. So at that point, it'll just be Zebra, but back to a single node implementation, which obviously has its cons as well. But at that point, the nature of Zebra should make it far easier to rapidly deploy consensus changes to adapt to sort of adverse circumstance if a top-heavy situation emerges.
I mean,
I do.
my hope with respect to the future of ZebraD is that there are actually, multiple forks of ZebraD, so that the community does still have to sort of come to a consensus at the protocol layer, as well as in terms of node implementation. There may be trade-offs and advantages to having different organizations responsible for different forks of ZebraD that all implement the same consensus protocol.
I have another topic, if like one or 2 minutes, something interesting that I saw here. There's a group that organized digital protests in Russia and in Iran using biometric passports. It's something called Ramiro or Rarimo. I'm mispronouncing the name, but they basically use zero-knowledge proofs to demonstrate that the person holding the passport of a certain nationality has voted in a shadow election once, and they can show that the citizens of that jurisdiction think in a certain way, maybe not aligned with the official results of a vote. It was more a demonstration. It's kind of like alpha software, but the entire thing is out there, open source with apps. It's a very interesting application of zero-knowledge proofs. It's not the first time that people try to do things with passports, but this one was actually went all the way to organize these kind of fake elections in these jurisdictions. I think it's something to note, to observe, that there's already out there people using government issues cryptography for like to subvert it for their own uses. It's really interesting.
Is this potentially a way of bringing civil resistance to an entirely anonymous governance mechanism?
I think we'll see something like this. Like there's going to be examples of this probably in Ethereum first, with like like possibly some DAOs or some urgent governance that they need, and they've been talking about this soulbound tokens and the ability to distinguish people for a while, but now that technology is starting to be tested with these biometrics. I don't know if it's like a solution. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm not sure it's an actual solution for Zcash, but it's probably relevant to in the long term to the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, in any kind of governance mechanism where you want to have pseudonymity or anonymity, civil resistance is a key challenge. Where you want to avoid a situation where a single person can create or can vote thousands or hundreds or millions of times, and therefore skew the results in a way that aren't genuinely representative of the population being polled. That's one of the key challenges that we've faced in how we allow people to preserve anonymity, whilst at the same time avoiding or maintaining civil resistance.
I think it allows consent on how much you allow, ponderation of whales. Like it becomes a parameter in the equation rather than kind of like being left as an unknown. But again, whether it's a problem or not is not really clear.
Okay, well, any other discussion topics that anybody wants to raise? Going once. Going twice. Okay, well, let's finish up there. And we will reconvene again in a couple of weeks, and this will be during the earlier. Sorry, that somebody has got their microphone unmuted and is causing feedback. We'll reconvene in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, by which time we'll have activated NU6 on testnet. But for the time, the next meeting will be in the earlier time slot as well, 1500 UTC. But for now, thank you everybody for joining us, and let's keep our fingers crossed for a successful and rapid activation of NU6 on testnet.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, bye.